Hi, I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. So with Mandalore once again in the public spotlight thanks to the final arc of the Clone Wars, I think it's time to discuss one of the major factions involved in Mandalore's recent history. And that is Death Watch, so let's talk about Death Watch. To understand Death Watch, you have to understand the pacifist government of Mandalore. For much of Mandalore's history, they were sort of this militaristic and expansionist planet that would regularly wage war against the Republic and various other large factions around the galaxy. But at the time of the Clone Wars, the current government of Mandalore is far more pacifist, looking to distance itself from the older, more warrior-like roots of their planet. This government, led by Duchess Satine, has opted to stay neutral in the Clone Wars and generally stay out of most, if not all, military conflict. In essence, Death Watch is a group of Mandalorians who are unhappy with the pacifist ideas of the current government of Mandalore. They want to return Mandalore to its militaristic past with its former warrior honor. As such, Death Watch spends much of their time on Mandalore's moon, a moon that they were exiled to, plotting the destruction of Mandalore's government. And they weren't just plotting, they would regularly attempt to assassinate Duchess Satine, the leader of the pacifist Mandalorian government. However, none of these assassinations succeeded, and Death Watch remained sort of isolated on Mandalore's moon. The only people who Death Watch was really an issue to were the government of Mandalore and the occasional Jedi sent to help Mandalore maintain its neutrality. Unlike the security forces back on Mandalore itself, Death Watch wore what we would recognize as Mandalorian armor. The traditional armor like what we'd see on Jango or Boba Fett. Many of them are skilled warriors and hold very dear the deep-rooted traditions of Mandalore's militaristic past. Many of the Mandalorian rituals and little bits of Mandalorian culture that we see in shows like The Mandalorian were actually, at this point in history, not really a big part of life on Mandalore, but were more carried on by Death Watch, who, once again, were more tied to Mandalore's militaristic past. But Death Watch's streak of failures in attempts to take over the planet wouldn't last forever, but neither would Death Watch. The big changing factor was Death Watch encountering Darth Maul. Following Mandalorian tradition, Darth Maul challenged the leader of Death Watch to a duel and ultimately bested him in combat. With the leader of Death Watch dead, Maul assumed the title of Mandalore, leader of Death Watch. But as an organization, Death Watch began to fracture pretty quickly. A group led by Bo-Katan, sister of Duchess Satine of Mandalore, was very unhappy with how Maul was running Death Watch. They splintered off into a separate group called the Mandalorian Resistance. After that group splintered off, Death Watch's name would change and they would pretty much universally be known as Maul's Mandalorian Super Commandos. These Super Commandos would go on to be the forces that would work with the Shadow Collective and eventually achieve their long-held goals of conquering Mandalore. With Duchess Satine out of the way and Darth Maul's Super Commandos sort of hailed as heroes in the liberation of Mandalore, they were quickly able to take the throne. They wouldn't hold it for long, however, because they would soon be besieged by the Republic in the Siege of Mandalore. If you want to learn more about how Darth Maul's Super Commandos and what was left of Death Watch took over Mandalore, I actually did a video on that just a couple weeks ago, so I'll throw a link up in one of the corners. And if you enjoyed what you saw here today, or you just want more sci-fi discussions, head down below, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. Also, don't forget to like and leave a comment. Tell me what you think of the way Death Watch kind of split and fractured. Do you think it's fitting for this organization, or would you have liked them to remain more unified through their goal of conquering Mandalore? So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.